Hey, how's it going today, everybody? I hope this day is finding you well. I am out here in my garden and I'm looking at a plum tree of mine. This plum tree has been in the ground for about 6 years, maybe 7 years. Maybe this is the 7th year for it. And as you can see, this plum tree is completely out of control. I've got so many branches coming up, going to and fro, crossing, going inside the tree. And this is an elephant heart plum, and I have over the years grafted on quite a few different varieties onto this plum tree, primarily because the elephant heart doesn't typically get enough chill hours to fruit here reliably. And so over the course of years, I've gotten quite a few other varieties. I think it's got either 5 or 6 different plum varieties on it. And so every year I go through and I do some cleanup on these trees, and I try to prune these into an open center. And so as you can see, I have just so many small branches going into the center of the tree. When you prune them as an open center, it helps with the airflow, and it also helps with the sunlight, so that more of the tree itself will be receiving sun and the sugars from the sun, and it just helps with a better fruit set. It helps to prevent disease and all that bad stuff. So pruning is essential. I typically tend to primarily just prune my Stonefruit. I really don't prune any of my citrus or the Elaeagnus. It's mainly just the Stonefruit trees and a couple others. I do the jujube. The mulberries definitely need to be pruned. So most of the deciduous trees, let's put it that way, most of the deciduous trees need a steady pruning. And so it's just about that time. I tend to wait until really late winter, just because I may do some grafting onto some of these trees. And so, but this particular one, I think I'm pretty much grafted out. And so I don't see myself doing a whole lot more graft work on it. As you can see here, here was a graft that I had done last year that was a success. You can see the microfilm on it and the new branches coming out. I think I still have some fishing string here on the graft point. Let me get you zoomed in there. You can see the graft point. And my marker must have fallen off this particular branch. I don't even know what it is at this point anymore, which is not a good thing. But I've got some other really neat varieties. I've got a Sweet Treat Blueberry. I've got a Spice Z Necta Plum on that branch. I've got a Pluot. I've got a Plumcot. I've got, here's another Blueberry. And so just quite a few different graft points on this tree. And so I just wanted to go over the basics on what I do to get this thing pruned up and ready for growing season. The primary thing that I look for are branches growing. These on the inside of this branch here going up or inward are what's called sucker branches. And those are primarily the ones you want to graft out, or excuse me, cut out. And so here's this branch coming outward. See this branch coming from the inside, and it goes directly upwards very vigorously. That is something you'd want to take out. That branch is just sucking energy from the rest of that branch, and you can see it's just not a good branch. It's going to go upward. And even a lot of these on the inside here, see the ones that are going straight up and then eventually going into the center of the tree. Those are all branches that you want to prune out. And so it does take some time. The larger the tree, the more time it takes. So with my pruning, I typically do maybe a tree every day or two, and I just do it over a course of time. I don't try to burn myself out and try to knock it all out in one day. I usually just start a little bit here, a little bit there, and start working at it. So this is going to be the first one that I start with this season. And so I will bring you on board, and I'll just show you briefly what it is I look for and what I cut out. So hang tight. The first order of business is hygiene and cleanliness. So I like to carry these sterile alcohol swabs on hand, and just use these, especially in between the trees or when starting out, and it just makes for a more hygienic application and use. And that way, if there are any diseases on the limbs or the tree itself, you're not spreading that in between the various trees. So I like to just go ahead and just clean the shears and get them prepped and ready to go. So that's going to be step one. So as I mentioned, with these sucker shoots coming up from the back end of the branch itself, you can see that they're just going straight up right into the center of this tree. So those are the first things that I take out, bar none. And then once you get all these out, it makes the rest of it go pretty quick. One thing I just do want to show is that on these branches here, there's going to be a collar, which is right here. You can see where the branch meets up with the larger branch meets up with the smaller limb. You just want to cut right at that collar point. And that just makes a nice clean cut. And so that's something to keep in mind. And you can see that collar. Just don't go and cut into this branch itself, because you're going to wound the branch. And so if you make a nice clean collar cut like that, it's going to heal a lot easier. And so here's one that's this little tiny branch here that's coming off. You can see that it's kind of wrapping around this branch and coming. You just want to find where that's coming from and clean that guy up. I'm just getting some of these smaller suckers here. Here's one that's going sideways. And so I'm just looking for all these back end branches here. That's going to be the first place that you're going to want to start. Here's another branch that I want to show you. It's this one coming right here, going out. You can see that it's coming from a branch there that's going to another branch over there. And so this is what you would call a crossing branch, and it hasn't quite made its way over to this branch here yet, but it will. And so any of these branches that are crossing, you just want to go ahead and prune them out as well. And so you just look for crossing branches. A lot of these sideways, if you've got two somewhat good branches side by side that are growing together and you want to keep them, a lot of these sideway branches you're just going to want to prune out, because those sideway branches will eventually go over to this, and then they'll start crossing and cause problems. So after you look for those sucker back end branches, you want to look for these sideways branches that will begin to cross, and so those will be the ones that you want to target next. After any of the suckers or the crossing branches, after that you really want to look for anything that's dead or diseased. So if you have any dead branches or any diseased branches, you really want to prune those out. And so on this particular tree, I did a quick inspection and I don't see anything that's dead or diseased. It's a pretty healthy tree, so I can go ahead and bypass that step. The last step after you've got all those other branches pruned out, you just want to manage the height. And so this guy is probably pushing 9 feet maybe. So I do want to control the height of this particular tree. You know, I'm not one to want to stand on a ladder to harvest fruit. I want to be able to harvest all my fruit from ground level, just reaching up. So I prune all these to be in the height range of about 6 to 8 feet, and I just allow them to continue to bush out over time and just encourage horizontal lateral branching versus the upright growth. And so to do that on this particular branch, just to give you an example, I'm looking at this branch here, and it is one that goes quite a bit into the air. I'm going to eventually take this branch and this rear branch off, but this branch I'm going to keep. And so what I want to do is I just want to encourage it to go horizontally. So if you look at the branch, you can see some of the nodes going up it, and whichever node that you cut above, it's gonna leaf out in that direction. So as you can see, this node here is gonna wanna go out in the same direction it's growing, and that's what you wanna do. You don't wanna cut on a node that's gonna go behind it or off to a side, because then it's gonna go that way and it's gonna eventually be a prune. So you want to cut at right above the node that you want it to go in, because that's the direction it's gonna go. So as you can see, this node's going directly into the direction I want it to grow, and so I'm just gonna prune it at a 45-degree cut. and then that is going to be the new branch. It's going to come out right here, and it's going to continue in that same direction, and those other 2 branches up there will be cut off. And so I will do that once I've got all the other cuts. Those will all be very easy to identify, and then I'll just go around the entire tree and I'll just cut them. And this is about at the, you know, near the limits of my reaching area. So then the new branch will come out here. Hopefully it'll be a more horizontal branch, and then it'll still be within my grasping length. And so that's what I do. That's how I go about pruning my trees. It does take some time, especially when they're quite a bit out of control. This one, it just, you know, branches out quite a bit. So this is probably one of the worst ones. I'll show you another example of a smaller peach tree here. And this one has got a very, very nice shape. And so this was just a little whip when I plugged it in, you know, 3 years ago or so. It hasn't been terribly long. And I just cut it. I just pruned right at the top of the trunk. I just cut off the whole works, and it made a nice open vase. And then so I've allowed these branches to grow out. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 branches. Between 3 and 5 main branches is ideal. And then from there, you'll just go ahead and manage those branches. So all 3 of these sub branches are on one main branch here. I've got 1 behind it, and then these 2. So that's 4 branches. And so what I may end up doing here with this particular one, I may end up taking these 2 inner branches off because this more horizontal branch is coming out. And so I think I want to encourage that and just increase the inner vase shape of this tree, and that'll just allow a little bit more sunlight and airflow. And so, you know, periodically you do need to take larger branches off just to work with the shape. It's a year by year thing, shaping out a tree. It takes many years to get a tree's shape lined out. And so it's something that you continually work on each and every year, and just encourage those more horizontal branches. Just because they're a stronger branch, they can hold more fruit, and it's just going to be a better structure overall for your tree. So I hope these tips really helped you out. And if you have any questions whatsoever in regards to pruning or anything along those lines, feel free to comment below, and I'll be happy to help you out. This is a sweet treat plueri tree, which is got a very nice shape. This is a very vigorous growing hybrid plum. It's a hybrid between a plum and a cherry, and it grows very quickly. So this is probably one of the faster growing stone fruits that I have here, the plueri. That's probably only been in the ground for maybe 4 years now, and it's larger than this Santa Rosa plum right next to it that I've had in the ground for, I think this is the 7th year for the Santa Rosa as well. So if you're looking for a very vigorous growing fruit, the Sweet Treat Plueri, which is a Zager hybrid, is a very vigorous growing tree, and it produces very excellent fruit. They are a smaller fruit than a standard plum, but they're very tasty. So I hope you have a great day today. Thanks for watching, and may the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ bless you in all that you do, and take care. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.